Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am not a Girl Scout troop leader, and I am not a member of Steve Irwin's family, as has already been mentioned to me several times
then
already.
Why are you dressed like that?
I am Sara Gonzales today.
Are you a Girl Scout leader in Steve Irwin's family? Is it possible that both of them are?
No. But apparently nobody here likes my dress, is what I've gotten. No, not you, everyone else.
No, well, the point is you're the only one that ever looks halfway decent on the show, so...
And before we get started, I would also like to point out that we actually had to delay the show because Stu over here was doing something very important. Could you tell everyone what you were doing?
Setting yet another new high score in our Galaga game, which now we have a full-size arcade unit of Galaga, and I had to commit mass fleet suicide at 613,000 because of this stupid show. So think about that when you're listening today.
I mean, it was intense, though.
It's an incredible sacrifice.
It was, but I mean, clothes started coming off.
Oh, yeah.
He was getting hot and
Oh, yeah. I was legitimately sweating. It was the hardest I've worked out in years. It's really embarrassing.
All right. Well, I'm glad I could be of service to you. What's your top story?
My Galaga score would be top, but we already covered that. So we'll go to the state of the 2020 presidential race for the Democrats. Interesting.
All right, Pat.
The presumption of innocence in America is dead. Gone.
Okay. All right. Jason.
Civil war.
Okay, obviously
Jason's in for Glenn today.
Yes. Obviously a lot to get into, Jason. But before we do that, I want to thank our sponsor, Cosmo Hurts Kids. Pat, I know you have worked with Cosmo Hurts Kids for a really, really long time. And you understand the importance of what they're trying to do with their campaign.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Victoria Hearst started this campaign. Her family, the Hearst Corporation, publishes Cosmo magazine. So I'm thinking Thanksgiving dinners are probably awkward. But she's not trying to censor the magazine or drive them out of business. She just wants the material harmful to minor laws to be applied in every state to Cosmo like it is other kinds of pornography, like Playboy or Penthouse. If you ever look at the articles in Cosmo, it's unbelievable. Sex positions and hey, have a vibrator next to your bed while you're reading this article, all that kind of stuff. And 11-year-olds just don't need to see that.
But are you sure, though?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Pretty sure.
So if you want to find out more about their campaign and how you can help to make sure that Cosmopolitan magazine cannot be sold to anyone under the age of 18, you can go to cosmohurtskids.com for more. Stu, the presidential race.
Yes, obviously a big day today. We're all excited about the announcement of Jay Inslee joining the race for 2020 Democrats.
Oh, man.
Who?
I know. Jay Inslee.
Oh, don't pretend. Come on, don't.
Don't try to do state. Yes, hey, governor. Yeah, nice. It's almost like his name is almost a trivia question. Yes, he is the governor of Washington. One interesting note about him: first governor to get into the race. Used to be kind of the easiest path to the White House. I mean, we had obviously Reagan, and we had Clinton, and George W. Bush, among many others, and then we had Obama, a senator, and then Trump, a celebrity. So, like, it's been a while since a governor has been able to get,
Bill Clinton. Did you forget?
Yeah,
Clinton?
no, Clinton too, of course, yeah. So that's, I guess, the only interesting thing. The other part about him, he's kind of a one-issue candidate where he is a global warming guy.
He's a climate guy.
He's a climate guy. He's been talking about this for a while. He's one of the people who, I mean, I will say, if you care about that issue, he does kind of talk the talk and walk the walk. He's put all sorts of crazy restrictions on a state.
I saw that statement. He felt compelled to get into the race because of the climate issue. And that's just so brave because there's no other candidate on the left right now to that ticket on that issue.
There's a strain of criticism on the left of the left, which is people use the global warming thing to talk about it. It's a good issue. People on their side obviously agree with it. But then when it comes down to it, they don't do all that much about it. And his point is like, all right, I want to do something about it. So you give him a little bit of credit there for at least being moderately consistent in what he wants to do. But it opened up this little wormhole for me of looking at all these big proposals that are coming out. They are all in a horrible state of affairs. Climate is, I think, was one notch below transportation as major concerns. So people were like, my Ubers are taking too long to show up, and man, where's the cup holder in this car? And then, oh yeah, global warming. Like it's legitimately where it is. It's like 23rd or something on the priority list of Americans.
The only reason it's mentioned at all is because they feel guilty that they don't care about it.
Yeah, exactly. It really is.
Guilty that they don't really buy in.
People, this has not worked. I mean, they've tried to scare everybody. So that's way down the list. The $15 minimum wage is another big pitch. By the way, you'll note Bernie Sanders now saying $15 or more. But the $15 minimum wage was just a new study just came out of a city, I want to say it was New York, that said restaurant employment has now dropped by the most since 9/11. So the giant planes crashing into buildings did this, and the $15 minimum wage did this, and the economic collapse of 2008 did not do it. It's worse than that, just the $15 minimum wage. You have the train situation with the Green New Deal. They want these high-speed trains. California's situation is a complete disaster. It started out as a $10 billion bill. It's now up to $100 billion, and they think it's going to be a lot more than that. It was supposed to make it from San Diego to San Francisco in 2 hours. Now they believe it's going to do less than half of that journey in 9 hours.
Well, so just dropped it, right?
And they just dropped most of it. So basically, they said, let's just finish up what we've already started. I mean, there's bridges built for this thing. Like, this has been partially built, and now Trump is coming after and saying, like, you guys are screwing this up so much. I want some of this money back. All of these big issues they've been talking about and trying to make, Elizabeth Warren wants a wealth tax. Looks like that's unconstitutional. There's very specific taxation that's allowed in the Constitution. It was very limited. That's why they had to pass the 16th Amendment to get an income tax. And the 16th Amendment is very clear. You cannot do this type of taxation. So it looks like Elizabeth Warren's big proposal for this campaign isn't even constitutional. All of these things, I mean, this is a wide swath of proposals, and all of them kind of at the same time are having massive, massive problems.
And widely accepted by virtually all the Democrats that are running.
Yeah.
I mean, Medicare for all, if you said, hey, you know what they're trying to do is universal health care. Obamacare is just the first step. You're a conspiracy guy. You were a racist. Now, everybody loves it, admits it, promotes it.
Yeah.
Same with free college for all.
These are the things you could not even mention.
Right.
You could not, probably not even in a party. You would whisper it in a cafe in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And you'd still probably get in trouble. But now it's just the standard.
Yeah. And for some reason, Republicans have not held to account. And yes, the Medicare for All is a big socialist program, and we know how bad that would be. And there's a good argument, and that argument must be made. The other argument that must be made is the Democrats, 7 years later, are arguing that their system that they passed sucks. Like, they are now saying Obamacare, the top notch of the entire Obama administration, the signature achievement,
didn't work.
Is so bad they need an entire new system a few years later, and no one seems to notice this. One other thing I will point out about Inslee's platform, and Inslee, as you may know, is not going to win the Democratic nomination. However, he is, I think, indicative of where the Democrats are. Jason and I talked about this the other day off the air, which is, let's just say...
You talked to Jason off the air?
I was playing Galaga, and he was standing behind me. You have, let's just say a Democrat wins. I mean, any of them win, okay? If that occurs, likely, obviously, the Democrats will still hold the House, right? No disagreement there. The Senate is a little bit closer. Republicans obviously have control of it now. But if the Democrats win the presidency, likely they're also taking the Senate. These people like Cory Gardner, who's in a purple state, are going to lose if...
Plus he banned birth control.
And did you hear that? Yeah, he banned birth control. That was bad. Bottom line is they're going to go in there with control of all three, House, Senate, and presidency, if they're able to win the presidency. I think that's pretty clear. If that happens, you would say, okay, well, there's at least the filibuster to stop the worst stuff, right? Like, you'd at least be able to stop it.
They want to get rid of that.
Inslee's platform is to get rid of the filibuster, and they want to get rid of it completely. And then think of a Bernie Sanders as president without a filibuster and control of all three.
Really bad.
That is really, really bad. And the problem is,
or with 60 votes, going the extreme on that.
I don't think they'll get to 60 this time, at least. However, they might not need it. If they get rid of the filibuster, they're not going to need the 60. So then you have a situation where they can kind of pass anything they want. And this is the logical sort of Overton window as this has gone. You had first the Democrats say, well, we only need 50 votes for judges. Then it was the Republicans saying, well, we only need 50 votes for Supreme Court. Now it's going to be the filibuster for the regular legislation is going to be gone. And Trump has said he wants that to happen. So when that comes up next time, the Democrats are going to say, your own president said this was the right thing to do, and they're going to be able to get it through, and that is going to be, I mean, that could honestly be like runaway. It's the exact opposite, obviously, of what the founders wanted.
There's so many like nightmare scenarios I can think of off that. I mean, I would assume that the courts would probably get involved in some of these crazy some of these crazy bills that would start going through. Then you can imagine it going to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court would you would hope would strike this stuff down. Then you start getting, there's already rumors of Democrats proposing an old FDR thing, stacking the courts with more judges. You see how this stuff is snowballing. I mean, that's just a nightmare scenario.
Getting rid of the Electoral College, they're proposing that.
They've already proposed that.
Most of them want to get rid of ICE. It'd be really bad if we have a Democrat president. Really, really bad.
All right, Pat, I want to move on to the presumption of innocence in this country.
Yeah, there isn't any. So,
okay.
Night, America.
That's way faster than my time.
Yeah, it didn't take long. The thing that really kind of sparked this for me was Harvey Weinstein. I think we can all agree it's likely Harvey Weinstein's probably a bad guy.
Yeah.
Right? He's
definitely a bad guy. We don't know.
Bad guy. We don't know if he's guilty of rape. He's never been convicted of anything. I don't know that he's even been charged yet. He just fired his team of lawyers because they weren't doing what he wanted them to do. And he just hired a lawyer from Harvard. And this guy is as left-wing and progressive as you can be. He's the dean of one of the big colleges at Harvard. He promotes big leftist causes. He's a member of the Black Caucus at Harvard. They're trying to get him kicked out of the school and removed from Harvard completely because he's representing Harvey Weinstein now. So it's gotten so bad with this Me Too movement that not only are you presumed guilty before anything has happened in a court of law, but also you can't even get representation now without your representation having his livelihood stripped away from him. It's unbelievable. Ted Bundy had representation. The Breivik guy in Norway who killed 77, mostly children, had representation. I mean, if we don't have the ability to represent the guilty even, as well as the innocent, then our justice system is over. It's just over.
It used to be a really fundamental sort of thing for the left liberals to believe in. I mean, because, you have these mass murders, these terrible people, and, there's the ACLU standing up and saying, no, they get representation. I wonder where the ACLU is on this, because they should be in his corner. Again, the guy has not been convicted of anything.
It's a tough stance, but somebody's got to take it, don't they?
Yeah. Every horrible person has an attorney. That's our system.
It shouldn't just be us, on the Blaze, on talk radio and television saying, hey, wait a minute, somebody's got to represent the guy.
Especially because there's not a lower life form than Harvey Weinstein. Like, he's not like one of our guys. Like, I think he's the worst guy in the world. He spent all of their money on all of his money on Democrats. I mean, he is one of the most liberal people as well. I have no reason to argue on his behalf. And I do think if gun to my head, do I think he's guilty? Sure. But still, that is not our system. They don't just ask me and say what I really think. That's not the way we work these things out. You got to go to court.
It's so crazy. The presumption of innocence is being replaced with the presumption of virtue on one side. As long as you can appear virtuous, it trumps the rule of law. It trumps
everything.
It trumps everything. Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I mean, it is interesting, though, when you talk about the presumption of innocence and how there isn't any on one side, but then on the other side, you've got people like Jussie Smollett, who, even in the face of all of this overwhelming evidence to show that he was not innocent, that he in fact did it, people were still making excuses for him and defending him and saying, I don't think he really did it.
And he still has his job at Empire, which I don't know that anybody on the right would at this point.
And I got news for you. If someone in the NFL had done that, the NFL would have protesters all over the place telling them, why aren't you releasing him? Why aren't you throwing him out of the league? Like, for whatever reason, celebrities get this nice, bump from their employers. They stick by them for some reason. As soon as an athlete does this, they got to be thrown out of the league immediately. I find it interesting, and I think on this front, because Smollett is obviously still innocent until proven guilty. Obviously the evidence has kind of come out in that one. The other one I think is interesting is this Michael Jackson documentary coming out this weekend. I'm fascinated by this because, again, he was never convicted in a court of law. He did make some payments. Yeah, he got acquitted. He was
exonerated.
He was exonerated. Now this new documentary comes out. His 2 star witnesses from the trial are now saying, oh, by the way, we lied before. He actually did molest us. HBO is doing a big documentary this weekend. And it's like, it's weird. I mean, I think hearing what their story, is important in some way. Like, I think they deserve to be heard if they say this happened. But it's like, on the other side of that, like, are we going to convict Michael Jackson posthumously of committing crimes that he was acquitted for?
And I have to say, on this presumption of innocence, I'm guilty too, because I have always kind of figured that he was asexual and he didn't have a childhood, and so, he hung out with 12-year-old kids. But based on what I've read about this documentary, I've kind of presumed he's guilty.
I know.
And I haven't even seen the documentary yet.
I know. Did you read the New York Times article? That's one. I think if you haven't read that, it is hard to get through.
Yeah, and hard.
It's hard. It's graphic in many parts. But he describes a feeling that we've all. I know Pat. We've talked about this on Pat and Stu back in the day. The feeling that you have. And you kind of described it as like, well, maybe he's just kind of a weirdo.
Right.
Like, maybe I don't get it. Like, maybe he's just so weird and had such a weird upbringing. He was a celebrity. He had a terrible family life at times.
Star in the world. You don't want to believe that about him.
Yeah, maybe we just don't understand. And it's like, it's probably not true. Right? Like, he probably just did all these things. But I think so many people have that because you want to believe. And the article made a great point, too, of like, okay, it's easy to say, okay, let's say that we think Michael Jackson's guilty. We're going to stop playing his songs. Well, what about all the music that was based off of those songs? There's a million songs. Do we stop playing songs that are just used that are Jackson derivative? Like all the entertainment that has gone through, all the people who are inspired by him.
You have 3 songs left.
You'd have 3 songs left. Yeah,
3.
It's amazing.
All right, back in a minute.
You gonna watch that?
Yeah.
I really do want to see it.
Before we get to Glenn Jr. and Civil War, I want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor. So, we talk about this often. We here at Blaze TV are very thankful for Relief Factor because Glenn is, I know, Stu, you say not tolerable, but tolerable-ish to work with.
More accurate. A tad more tolerable.
Right. Still, it's like.
And I will say, like, I've been lucky so far to dodge any serious ongoing pain. However, after setting multiple high scores at Galaga, this hand, which is my firing hand, we're talking about 5,400 shots in about 20 minutes. And I have tightness here.
Oh, no.
A major tightness. If you see right here, I'm not flipping you off. I'm putting 2 fingers up. There's a boo-boo right here, which comes when you scrape your finger, when you're going like back and forth like this, and you scrape your finger. I've got multiple wounds right now, and I think some Relief Factor coming my way. If I get do you have the 1995 quick start?
Yes, the 3-week quick start. Yes. Okay. See if it works for you.
Yes, I think I'm going to try it now because these are major
stop the inflammation that's flaring up in your.
And then you can work on a high score.
Right, exactly. If I didn't have to do this show, I'd be at $1 million right now. I want to make that clear.
Prove it.
I'm going to have to one of these days.
All right, but in all seriousness, if you are in pain, go to relieffactor.com, see if they can help you. It works for 70% of the people who buy this 3-week quick start pack. They keep on ordering it. It's working for them. It can work for you. It can also work for you, Stu.
Good.
So
I'm in need.
All right, Jason, Civil War.
Okay, I promise not to go full on Alexander Jones on this.
You always promise this, and you just always.
When that disclaimer comes,
right
that means he knows he's getting close to the line.
It means we're getting very close. Yes.
We're about to hear about fish-human hybrids.
This is something that I've been kind of fascinated on for a little while now. Just how. You know what? I'll get to that in a second. Let's start with, Nancy Pelosi, some comments from her, I think it was yesterday, where the biggest line that stood out was, just vote no, no. And regardless of what, this had to do with the gun control bill, regardless of whatever else the Republicans wanted to put into it or anything they wanted to add, it didn't matter if it was something that they would possibly agree with, and this is the far left in the Democratic Party and people in the middle. It didn't matter what it was. Nancy Pelosi is telling them just to vote no. And Ocasio-Cortez is like one-upping on this. She's like, actually, if anybody from our side, is what she said, anybody in the Democratic Party on our side, votes at all for anything that the Republicans say, then I'm making a list. And she supposedly has a list of, and this is in the Washington Post, she has a group of, I think she said, 75 activists. And she's going to deliver that list to her own people. She's going to deliver that list so they can do like a David Brock on them, or that they can primary against them to get them voted out. Wow. Absolutely insane. Now, they're splitting people. There's no middle ground anymore. It's just this side, it's just that side. And it's the same thing what you can see in media, social media, tech giants. They're not in silencing people. They're not even allowing any kind of middle talk. There's no middle ground. There's just this side and there's that side. I know I said I wouldn't go Alex Jones, but they silenced. Here it comes. They silenced Alex Jones. There's been several stories over the past several months of different people that have gotten kicked off for who knows. For a lot of times they can't even define it. Meanwhile, you have the Antifa DC account is still up. Louis Farrakhan, Nation of Islam account is still up. But all these other sites, Tommy Robinson, I think was most recent to get kicked off of Facebook. And it kind of like, pretty soon there's going to be no way, but there's going to be this line of thought versus this line of thought. There's no way to actually hear an opposing viewpoint because you're being silenced. And one of the effects of that is the most radical people are being forced into that same side. So even if you're just a regular Joe Blow conservative, you now find yourself on the same side as someone you would not stand toe-to-toe with. You wouldn't stand shoulder-to-shoulder with. But now we're all being pushed on that side. And now you're getting some people taking that to the even extremes. Now, I'm talking about a civil war of discourse, basically. We are being ideologically forced this side against that side.
You hyped that up way too much. You're like, civil war of discourse. Just kidding.
So that's how I believe it is. I don't think we're actually pulling out the muskets and the cannons and going toe to toe.
Yeah, if Glenn were actually here, then he'd say that.
He would say that. But he wouldn't be alone. I just heard a podcast. It was Laura Ingram's podcast. She was talking to a former federal prosecutor, Joe DiGenova, and he's a Fox News contributor. He went pretty much full Alexander Jones. Take a listen.
We are in a civil war in this country. There's two standards of justice, one for Democrats, one for Republicans. The press is all Democrat, all liberal, all progressive, all left. They hate Republicans. They hate Trump. So the suggestion that there's ever going to be civil discourse in this country for the foreseeable future is over. It's not going to be. It's going to be total war. And as I say to my friends, I do two things. I vote and I buy guns.
Wow.
That's something you could hear on the Alexander Jones program.
Totally, but this is what was surprising me. So I saw this and I just started Googling this guy, and I started seeing people on MSNBC, pundits on MSNBC, that were talking about this and actually agreeing with him. Like, yeah, this country is hurtling towards civil war. That used to be something that you would only hear Alex Jones talk about.
Or Glenn.
And Glenn Beck.
Or Glenn Beck. Nobody in the mainstream would talk about that. They wouldn't. Now that type of talk is mainstream. Why? Because we are being forced apart. We're being forced into that. And that goes all the way from what you saw with the Democrats this week, right from the House floor, or from social media. We're being forced into these situations. And again, you're going to have the most radical of the radical saying these types of things. It's a very dangerous time, not only politically, but socially. You see, people are actually fighting in the streets nowadays. I mean, it's absolutely insane. You can't step on a college campus and have an opposing viewpoint without physical violence. It's getting dangerous.
I have to believe that average America is recognizing this, right? Like, we see what's presented in mainstream media, and we see the stories that they hype up, and we only see what they're pushing. For instance, you would think that climate change was a bigger deal to much more of society than is actually true, because all we're being pushed on mainstream media is climate change, climate change, climate change. But I mean, I have to wonder if the average American recognizes that that's where they're going and is going to reject it. I mean, even the average Democrat. You know what I mean? Because it's just because it's being pushed doesn't necessarily mean that the everyday voter is not going to recognize it and make a decision of whether or not they want to support a party that's doing that.
And I would agree with that pretty much for today. Like, I think most people don't follow this stuff as hardcore as like what we do, and we'll see this stuff and maybe even get a little bit more amped up on it or riled up. I think I'm more worried about what's coming next. If it's this bad now, what's the next step? If you're worried about the president or the person in powers now, that's not the person to worry about. Worry about the guy that follows him or the woman that follows him, because it's probably going to be a whole lot worse, the one that follows. I was sitting waiting for my kid not too long ago for school, and everybody on the playground, all the kids, 8 years, 10-year-old, young kids were talking about gender issues, race issues, calling each other racist, all this stuff, talking about politics. It's like, kids? Well, they were just doing this doing the monkey bars and talking about politics. It's insane.
All right, back in a minute.
By the way, Alex Jones.
If you missed Glenn's speech at CPAC, he did a really great speech at CPAC on socialism and capitalism and where we're headed. You can find it at YouTube. CPAC posted it. So go to CPAC's YouTube and catch Glenn's speech, and we will see you in overtime.
You only went 3.